Hey, what do we make of this move out of the gates? Mariners strike first in free agency with the big signing. I mean, I think we all knew that. I mean, we did know. They said that's our priority. We want to get this done. They made Justin Hollander made no secret of it, and I don't even know if Josh spoke to another team. Maybe his reps did, but I mean, he for the most part didn't even really test free agency. I mean, this was quick, and it was decisive, and it was kind of unlike the Mariners in the Dipoto era where they don't tend to go big in the offseason. The biggest free agent deal they've ever signed under Jerry is Mitch Garver, 2 years, $24 million.
It was a great deal, and it is the way that free agency should be. There is no sense in waiting around when the team that you want to play for makes you the offer you want and the fair offer. I know Jeff Passan of ESPN reported that actually the Pirates had made a pretty serious play.
Okay.
Not quite at the level of the Mariners, but somewhere close. The Pirates are trying to announce their legitimacy and get back on the radar of the sport. It usually takes a few cycles of free agents, and often you have to overpay to bring someone in to announce your arrival, which is the way it was for the Tigers coming off of 119 losses back in 03 when they overspent for Pudge Rodriguez. You sometimes have to overspend, but I think it was emblematic of where the Mariners are, that they made a strong offer, a good offer. I think Josh Naylor did very well, but the Mariners didn't have to give him 2 or 3x of what another team would have done.
Right.
And I think that is a tribute to how much Josh loved it in Seattle. And again, I want everybody, this is a fan conversation, this is a front office conversation, manager, everything. When you create the right environment and when you win, you don't have to try as hard or spend as much in free agency. When anybody ever asks, why do teams spend on infrastructure, on coaching, on good travel, high performance, whether it's physical therapists, mental health support, all the different things, the way they treat families, all the things that go into doing it the right way. When you do it the right way, often enough, it comes back to you with times like this, where the first major free agent that is signed is your guy, and you get a chance to keep him. And by the way, when you make the right signing, it also sets you up well. You get to retain your leverage a bit when you talk to Eugenio Suarez or Jorge Polanco or others at those positions, to where other teams now know you're not desperate. You are operating from a position of strength because people want to play for you. So this was evidence, and I'm glad it happened in the way that it did, the timing that it did. Obviously, Seattle and Seattle fans don't love the way that Game 7 ended, but this is a really nice demonstration that people in the sport, especially those in their own clubhouse, were paying attention. Okay, October, it didn't end the way that you wanted it to, but it still is giving you benefits. And the benefit is that notable guys that have a lot of respect and cred in the game, like Josh Naylor does, want to be Mariners, and they don't have to play a game and wait 3 months to make it happen.
Ever heard of this with Josh Naylor doing he did a scouting report and all kinds of analysis and everything? I mean, I've never heard of a player doing that before. I mean, that's just above and beyond.
Well, I think I'll say this, Dave, that there are players that take a real studious approach. I remember when Zach Greinke, this is years ago now, but when Zach was going through the process that eventually led him to get traded for the first time when he went to Milwaukee from Kansas City, that basically Zach was going around Major League Baseball. The Royals had given him permission to talk with teams, and he basically was going to different GM saying, this is how I think you should run your organization. And so on some level, it's actually good. I know that Max Scherzer, some of the more studious players that have a lot of time and credentials in the game, they take a very serious look. I know Scott Boras has done similar things. And by the way, somewhere in my office, I have to see if I can find it somewhere. It's on one of these shelves, I promise. I have the old Prince Fielder binder. I like Scott gave it to me as a souvenir, which has the presentation of why Prince Fielder was like, the second coming of Gehrig.
Yeah.
And so it's in there. But basically, when you do it the right way as an agent, you prepare, but also the player prepares. And by the way, what we heard in the second half of the season, when a lot of people around the Mariners were saying, wow, Josh Naylor has one of the highest baseball IQs of anybody that I've been around, and Jerry DiPoto said the same thing at the press conference. Like, they weren't just saying it to say it, saying it to give him some flowers. It was real that he pays attention to the game, and he knows what's going on here. And he's had the fortune of now being a part of, I guess this is now 5 organizations, so he's been around enough to have played with people in different contexts, to know what he likes, to know what he doesn't like. There's no perfect organization. The Mariners aren't perfect either, but they're really good. They have built something sustainable, and you look around and Josh says, listen, this pitching staff is going to be good for a while still. It's maybe not as young or as cost-effective as it once was, but it's still really good. Excellent closer, a place that people want to play, amazing fan support. There were still people I talked with that said, Toronto was really loud, but outside of that, Seattle was probably the best atmosphere anybody saw during the course of October. It was just it was a great environment, and I think that Josh saw it. He's smart enough to know what he was walking into, and I think it says a lot about him and the Mariners that they got together so quickly.
Well, and his signing, and as quickly as it happened, John told me that he got some level of assurance from the front office that we're going for this. Because of how, and I keep saying this, everybody wants to win. Everybody in that clubhouse wants to win, but he's almost maniacal about baseball.
Yeah.
Talking about Naylor, and I think money is great. He wants to be paid properly and fairly, and that's huge. But I think the Pirates are probably a non-starter. Like, I'm not going to win there. So I've got to believe they gave him some level of assurance that, hey, it doesn't end with you. We were close last year. We got to get over the hump in order to do that. We've got to do our part. So I don't know. Do you get that vibe? And we talked to Justin Hollander yesterday on the show, and he talked about wanting to get another bat, and then he brought up Polanco or Suarez, and I'm like, that's great. But I would think another bat in addition to, because your words are ringing in my ear that, hey, you've got work to do just to get back to where you were. So you got to improve on what you were to end the season. And what you were to end the season, you had all 3 of these guys. So you got to bring back maybe one of the 2 and then somebody else. Do you agree with that?
I agree, because let's think about it, player for player. And again, in fairness, I look at Williamson, elite defender.
Yeah.
And I think this too. If you get enough, and Garver, certainly he had some big moments for the Mariners in the postseason. He helped them get past the Tigers, obviously, in Game 5. Kind of a quiet contribution, but it was there, and they probably don't win the game without him. Is that they probably need more out of that roster spot, right? In terms of, he's basically signed to be a DH backup catcher. Is that Harry Ford? Is Williamson, with the benefit of now one more full year? We know that he's an elite defender. Is Williamson able to approximate? It's really hard to approximate what Suarez does. It's not fair to ask Williamson to be Suarez. It's not fair to ask Young to be Polanco, and it's probably not even fair to ask Ford to be Garver. So you need to do something with those 3 roster spots. And I think you've got, with Williamson, Ford, Young, you still have options to send to the minor leagues on all of them.
And Ryan Bliss as well.
And Bliss as well, exactly. Now, in fairness, Polanco ended up being one of their best signings, and it was a very inexpensive signing, and it was really late.
Yeah.
So sometimes you can play this thing out and get a good deal in February, but I would sure like to see the Mariners keep this momentum going and get one more significant bat before the end of the calendar year. Now, I'm not saying they're going to go out there and get Kyle Tucker or Schwarber. I tend to think that Schwarber is probably going to go somewhere in east of the Mississippi at this point. But there's a lot of different bats out there that I do think would make a significant impact. And again, they don't have to be brand names, but I would sure like to see a Ryan O'Hearn in Seattle. I think he would be someone that is, as a DH type, again, maybe there's a little redundancy there, but but there are bats there that will make a big impact. And again, people were watching; they were paying attention to what this team is able to do. And Williamson, I do love his defense, and that is something where if I was Jerry Dipoto and Justin Hollander, and if I added enough offense in a couple different roster spots, I might feel comfortable with Williamson and his defense there, and I could live with the lighter bat. But I would sure want to get one more really powerful player, I think, around the diamond that I felt confident could play every day before I penciled in Williamson as my third baseman, just because you know there is still some growing that bat has to do.
Right, and I was talking about that, saying if they decide Williamson's our third baseman, that maybe they do sign Polanco or Gino, and one of those two becomes their primary DH. Yeah, they can play third or second, depending on which one it is, but we're going to go with Williamson. We're going to live with his lack of damage, if you will, at least for now, because we've got Polanco as our primary DH, or we've got Gino as our primary DH. Could you see him doing that?
Sure, and I also think that Ford is somewhere in this conversation too. I think that there are certain prospects that you hear about a lot, and it's now basically time for them to figure out who he is.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting that they trade him, but it's almost to the point where, okay, you've got a spot now for a backup catcher DH type role. If you're not going to trust him for this now, when are you going to trust him? Okay, the guy that catches takes very few days off, okay, as we all know.
Yeah.
So this is basically the job. And if you can't trust him for this job now, I sort of wonder, when are you going to trust him? And if you're not going to trust him for this, maybe you do move him on and think about some different possibilities and combinations. That's to me the Ford conversation is a big one, because I want to see what he can do in the big leagues. I hope it's in Seattle, but he's obviously not going to catch 80 games this year. Unless there's an injury, which no one wants to see. So I do think that conversation is a very interesting one. You could argue that the best backup catcher for Cal is someone who is just an absolute ace defensively, and say, listen, you're going to play X number of games when Cal is DHing, but we don't need you to hit a ton. We just need you to catch this really talented staff. Is that a veteran? It's just that to me is the interesting push and pull here. But I agree with you. I think that signing Gino to be a DH or a bit more of a timeshare, because you think about it, maybe Williamson takes the roster spot that once belonged to Garver, if you look at it that way, because obviously by the end of the year, Williamson was not on the active roster to end the normal portion of the season. So maybe look at it that way, like you're adding Williamson, believing that he can hit at least as much as Garver did, and obviously Mitch didn't have a great offensive year, and that Gino and Williamson sort of share that role. It's a pretty good idea that they should have you be a special assistant, Bob.
I'm sure Jerry agrees with you. He loves me.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Hey, between Williamson and Young and maybe Harry Ford too, but I mean, I think people forget players develop all the time. It happens every year, and so, but you're kind of leaning on, hey, can Williamson, be a power hitter, and players develop into those guys all the time. But which one do you think is most likely?
It's a good question. I think that of those young guys, Williamson did play for a long enough time. I mean, the way that he carried us up, again, I realize the numbers weren't there. He arrived probably a little bit ahead of schedule, but I know that he impressed the Mariners coaching staff with just how he arrived at spring training and the way that he carried himself. And something about him, I just believe he's going to be an everyday player. Maybe it's not going to be with the highest level of offensive output, but he looks like an everyday player for me. And Young, listen, he's a very young player, obviously, to pardon the pun, but I thought that in general he also acquitted himself pretty well. And looks like the kind of guy that's going to be able to play in the middle of the diamond. Emerson might actually have the higher ceiling. And again, maybe his time is coming later on as J.P. Crawford's time with the Mariners winds down, whenever that happens. But I think I'm probably of the group, just based on what I saw this past year. I think Williamson might have the best chance to be a consistent everyday player for them in the first half of this year. With Ford, and unless he hits enough to be the DH, the question just keeps coming back to me: how much is he going to play?
Yeah,
and that is the dilemma for them. Is he's probably too good to play AAA every day. But he's certainly not good enough to take at bats away from Cal Raleigh. So there may be a team out there, by the way, that needs a catcher. There's actually a bit of a catching carousel going on right now, potentially. A team like the Angels with Ohapi. If they end up flipping Ohapi, I think to me the big domino will be Philly. If Philly cannot re-sign Real Muto, maybe they go out there and trade for Ohapi, Bailey, Rutschman. I'm just mentioning different possibilities. And then maybe one of those teams says, okay, now we need a catcher, and we believe in Harry Ford to do that job. Again, there's a multiple-step process here. But I just think that if the Mariners don't view him as an everyday catcher, I wonder if there's a team out there that does. And this might be the time to just evaluate that prospect, just because you're behind one of the most important people in the entire sport. Now, that being said, he'll play more in spring training than he normally would if he stays with the Mariners, because Cal's going to be away playing for Team USA. So there will be more at-bats to be had. He'll get a lot of – and now Harry might also, by the way, be playing for Great Britain. We have to see how that all plays out during the course of the Classic. So there's a lot of different scenarios. And again, if Harry Ford is there in Houston – if he's playing for Great Britain against the U.S. and against Mexico and in some pretty high-profile games, you also learn a lot about a young man in that setting as well. So I think it's going to be a pretty interesting spring no matter where Harry ends up playing.
Hey, we're up against the break, but just give me a quick thought on the bullpen, because I don't want to give that short shrift there. It's important. They work the back end of that bullpen hard this season. They need help there. But am I being too cavalier and going, yeah, whoever they bring in, they're going to turn them into somebody productive, because that's just what they do. I mean, they've done it with these names. You either never heard of them, or you look at their numbers and go, what? He's got a 5.2 ERA. Who's this guy? And then he becomes Paul Sewald, or he becomes Justin Topa, or Spire, or Bizzardo, or you can go down the list of guys that they've just turned into really productive arms there. So we tend to just go, yeah, they're going to figure out the bullpen. Sign who you want, because I know it's going to more often than not work out. Am I being too cavalier about that?
Maybe a little bit, I would say. Maybe a little, Bob, because they're – now what I'll say is this. The Mariners, like all teams, have their characteristics that they see with the high spin rate fastball, as the Verdi fastballs. We hear people talk about it. Different pitches that they believe have the right characteristics to get hitters out in big spots. But if I'm them, I would want to add a lefty to help Spire a little bit, to be that other second option back there late in the game.
Well, they just picked up a lefty from the Dodgers in a trade, I think.
That's right. They did. Yeah. They did that. My philosophy is you can never have too much good bullpen help. I also think that you need to prepare for the potential that some of the guys that you relied on a ton, whether it's Brash or Munoz, they pitch deep into October. You sometimes need to help those guys out by giving them a bit more days off early on in the year. I'm not saying to go out necessarily and get Devin Williams, but someone that you believe can help you in leverage spots. I think that's a part of the club that the Mariners, this is not breaking news, they play a lot of close games.
Yeah.
So you're calling these numbers a lot. So you can't expect the relievers to be that great year after year unless your name is Mariano Rivera.
Yeah. John, we always love the conversation, man. Look forward to it every week. We appreciate you. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk again next week.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.